Chapter 1. The Illusion of the Deferred Life. There is a quiet, unspoken agreement that almost everyone in the modern world signs the moment they enter adulthood. It is a subtle contract, rarely questioned, deeply ingrained in our culture, and it sounds perfectly reasonable on the surface. The premise is straightforward. Work intensely right now, set aside a portion of your earnings carefully, and invest those savings wisely so that someday in the distant future, you can finally stop working and begin doing whatever you truly want. This is the conventional deferred life plan, a systemic cycle of working hard today with the singular hope of retiring later. Think about the reality of this arrangement. Picture a dedicated professional, perhaps someone entirely relatable to your own experience and who wakes up every morning to a jarring alarm, commutes through heavy traffic and sits at a desk for 40 or 50 hours a week. Year after year, they funnel a fraction of their paycheck into a retirement account. They tell themselves that the stress, the missed family dinners, and the perpetual exhaustion are simply the necessary price of admission for a golden twilight. They are trading the most vibrant, energetic decades of their existence for the promise of a few leisurely years at the very end. But eventually, a persistent thought begins to echo in the back of the mind. The realization dawns that the standard 9-to-5 grindstone does not actually fire up the imagination to any great degree. There is a profound flaw in postponing your joy, your freedom, and your ultimate desires for a future that is never guaranteed. This realization has sparked the rise of a completely new subculture, a quiet revolution of individuals who have fundamentally rejected the idea of deferring their lives. These individuals have abandoned the traditional script completely. Instead of waiting decades to live, they organize their reality around a completely different set of uncommon rules. By doing so, they often manage to work incredibly few hours a week while earning more in a single month than the average person might earn in an entire year. This subculture operates on a totally different definition of wealth. They understand that money existing merely as numbers in a bank account is entirely meaningless without the ability to enjoy it. To these individuals, true wealth is measured not just in dollars, but in two entirely different currencies, time and mobility. To understand this shift, you have to look deeply at the contrasting mindsets between those trapped in the deferred life and those embracing this new form of wealth. The traditional mindset aspires to simply work for oneself, perhaps starting a small business to escape a corporate boss. But the new approach completely changes the dynamic, aiming instead to have others handle the work for you. The conventional worker focuses on grinding constantly and putting in hours whenever they want, whereas the liberated individual focuses entirely on applying the minimum possible effort necessary to achieve maximum results. Consider the ultimate goal of the old way of thinking. The traditional dream is to stockpile enough cash to retire early and then essentially do nothing. It is a vision built entirely on exhaustion, the desire for an absence of work rather than the presence of meaning. The new approach shatters this. Instead of a single permanent retirement at the end of life, the goal becomes taking regular, extended breaks throughout your life to actively do what you love. The contrast extends deeply into how we consume and what we value. The deferred life mentality wants to buy anything it desires, chasing a hollow definition of success, defined by having more. It desires the title of being the boss and making huge sums of money just for the sake of accumulation. The new paradigm is completely different. It focuses on having the exact amount of money needed to chase your actual dreams, stripping away the excess to achieve more quality and less clutter in your daily existence. It is not about possessing everything. It is about experiencing the freedom to do all the things you deeply want to do and becoming whoever you want to be. Even the concept of the ultimate financial goal is completely reimagined. The traditional worker is always waiting for a massive, singular payoff in the future, like an enormous corporate buyout or a magical retirement number. The liberated thinker focuses on thinking big but structuring life to experience a substantial, fulfilling payday every single day, rather than indefinitely waiting for some abstract moment in the future. Ultimately, the traditional mindset seeks freedom strictly as an escape. a way to be free from doing tasks that are intensely disliked. It is a defensive posture. The new wealth is deeply offensive in the best possible way. It actively seeks the freedom and the resolve to passionately pursue profound dreams rather than just working for the mere sake of working. The goal is not merely to eliminate the bad aspects of existence, but to actively step out and experience the absolute best that the world has to offer. Achieving this incredible reality means stepping away from everything you have been taught about career, success, and sacrifice. It requires abandoning the deeply ingrained habit of waiting for permission to live. You must move from merely wishing for the time, income, and mobility to do what you want eventually, and realize that you can actively design a life where you possess those things starting today. The journey ahead is not about fixing a broken system, it is about leaving the system entirely. It is about understanding that the life you are deferring is the only life you have, and the time to completely rewrite the rules is right now. Chapter 2. Rewriting the Rules of the Game. To break free from the deeply ingrained habits of a deferred life, you must be willing to completely dismantle the foundational assumptions you have held about work and success. The individuals who successfully redesign their lifestyles do not simply work harder. They operate under a completely different psychological framework. They understand that to escape the crowded, exhausting path of the majority, they must fundamentally change the rules of the game they are playing. It begins with redefining the ultimate endpoint. You must start thinking of traditional retirement as a worst-case scenario, an absolute last resort, rather than the triumphant goal of your entire career. It is perfectly sensible to use retirement accounts as a financial fallback position, but it is a tragedy to bank all your hopes on it while letting your current, vibrant years slip away. You should utilize tax-advantaged accounts for their structural benefits, absolutely, but you must refuse to let them represent the sum total of your life's aspirations. To truly live now, you must recognize a fundamental truth about human biology. Our interest and our physical energy are cyclical, not linear. We are not machines built to run at a constant, unyielding hum for 40 years straight. Because our energy naturally ebbs and flows, the most logical way to structure a life is to alternate periods of intense, highly effective commercial activity with regular mini-retirements. These are extended periods where you step entirely away from the grind to recharge your batteries and explore the world. You must learn to work fiercely only when you are at your absolute sharpest and most effective, deliberately choosing to step away rather than pushing forward when you are jaded, drained, and washed out. There is a powerful psychological hurdle you must clear to achieve this rhythm, the guilt associated with doing less. Society equates endless toil with moral virtue, but it is absolutely not lazy to do less work if you are laser-focused on completing only the most productive and meaningful tasks. You have to systematically find workable ways to slash the total time you spend sitting in an office while simultaneously achieving far more than you ever did before. The secret is to ruthlessly direct your energy toward being genuinely productive rather than just visibly busy. Once you realize this, the urge to change your life will build, but a new trap immediately appears. The illusion of the perfect moment. You will tell yourself that you will make the leap when the economy stabilizes, when your bank account hits a certain number, or when the kids are a little older. The harsh truth is that the timing is never right to completely overhaul your life or strike out on your own. The universe does not align its planets to give you a clear, risk-free runway. You must take the plunge into the unknown with absolute enthusiasm right now, rather than waiting in a state of permanent hesitation. The word someday is a disease that will take your dreams to the grave with you. You must permanently replace it in your vocabulary with the word today. Acting immediately requires a certain kind of audacity. You have to accept that it is always vastly more fun and usually far more effective to ask for forgiveness after the fact rather than begging for permission before you act. Most people are paralyzed by the fear of disapproval, but you must get exceptionally good at being a constructive troublemaker. Move fast, break old habits, push boundaries, and simply be prepared to offer a genuine apology if you actually manage to severely disrupt something. But do not ask for a hall pass to change your own life. Part of moving fast involves knowing exactly what tools to bring to the fight. Most conventional advice tells you to obsess over your flaws and work tirelessly to round out your skill set. This is a recipe for pure mediocrity. You must actively find ways to relentlessly emphasize your inherent strengths rather than wasting precious time and energy trying to fix your natural weaknesses. It takes a massive amount of effort to turn a weakness into an average skill, but focusing on using your best, most natural tools wisely will yield extraordinary world-class results as you become more efficient and begin to reclaim massive amounts of time. A new danger emerges: the void. It is entirely possible to have too much of a good thing, and an empty calendar can quickly become a curse if you are not prepared for it. You must plan on utilizing your newly acquired free time deliberately and wisely, rather than just sitting around aimlessly doing nothing. True freedom is not about idleness. It is about having the ultimate luxury to do exactly what you deeply want to do, as opposed to doing only what you feel obligated to do by external forces. When people fail to build this life, they almost always point to a single culprit: a lack of cash. But money alone is rarely the actual solution to a stagnant life, and you must vow never to use it as a convenient scapegoat. Instead of passively telling yourself that you would finally do that amazing thing if only you had more money, you must figure out how to create a life of deep enjoyment right now, using the resources you currently possess. Chasing larger and larger sums of money merely for the sake of accumulating more inevitably transforms into a pointless, exhausting illusion. Stop waiting for a magical fortune and start living the life you actually want today. To do this, you must permanently shatter the illusion of absolute income. Society measures success by absolute income, which is simply the total number of dollars a person earns in a year. But this metric is dangerously incomplete because it completely ignores the massive cost of time. You must instead become obsessed with relative income, a metric that perfectly combines the total amount of money you earn with the exact amount of time it takes you to earn it. Imagine someone making $200,000 a year, but they are chained to a desk for 80 hours a week, deeply stressed and constantly exhausted. Now imagine another person making $60,000 a year, but they work only 10 hours a week from a cafe overlooking the ocean. The second person is vastly wealthier in relative terms. As long as you generate enough absolute income to comfortably cover your essential expenses, your singular focus must shift entirely toward maximizing your relative income. The absolute only way to achieve true freedom is to drastically increase the amount of money you make for every single hour you choose to work, rather than simply surrendering more hours to the machine. As you rebuild your life around these new metrics, you will face challenges, but you must learn to distinguish between the stress that destroys you and the stress that builds you. You need to actively seek out and take immense advantage of positive stress, known as eustress. While the negative grinding stress of a miserable job is toxic and destructive to your physical health, the positive stress required to stretch your capabilities and realize your grandest dreams is incredibly beneficial. It acts as a powerful stimulus for worthwhile, profound personal growth. Since you simply cannot make any forward progress without encountering friction, the more constructive eustress you deliberately create in your life, the better off you will be. One of the most effective ways to manufacture this positive pressure is to find and study exceptional role models who perfectly epitomize the exact lifestyle and achievements you are striving to emulate yourself. These new rules are designed to aggressively challenge the boring, accepted status quo, allowing you to view massive life problems from an entirely different vantage point than the rest of the world. Above all else, the liberated mind craves visceral excitement. The terrifying prospect of waking up to do the exact same mediocre tasks day after day, year after year, is seen for what it truly is: pure, unadulterated boredom. Instead of settling for a bland existence, you must become intensely focused on attempting the exact kinds of audacious things that perfectly reasonable, conventional people routinely dismiss as being totally unrealistic or absurdly hard. The grand secret of the world is that 99% of people are competing for the exact same realistic, reasonable goals, making that path incredibly crowded and difficult. Doing something breathtakingly bold and seemingly unrealistic is very often much easier than battling the masses for a perfectly reasonable, thoroughly average existence. You must set timelines for your most profound dreams and systematically execute the steps today that will forcefully pull those dreams into absolute reality. Chapter 3. The Architecture of a Dream. There is a profound danger in how most of us are taught to think about our deepest desires. When asked what they truly want out of life, the vast majority of people will offer answers that are beautifully poetic but entirely useless. They will say they want to be financially free, they want to travel the world, or they simply want to be happy. These are not plans. These are distant, cloudy wishes. The fundamental reason why so few people ever achieve their ultimate lifestyle is not a lack of capability, but a complete lack of definition. A vague desire is impossible to act upon. To bridge the massive gap between the life you are currently living and the life you desperately want, you must stop treating your dreams like abstract fantasies and start treating them like architectural blueprints. You must learn the rigorous, completely realistic science of defining exactly what you want and calculating precisely what it costs. The first step in building this architecture is to break your nebulous vision of the future down into 3 concrete pillars: what you want to have, what you want to be, and what you want to do. Having is the easiest for most people to conceptualize. It encompasses the material realities of your ideal life, whether that is a sprawling home with a wraparound porch, a specific classic vehicle, or the absolute best equipment for your favorite hobby. Being requires you to look inward and define the identities or skills you wish to possess, such as becoming a fluent speaker of a foreign language, an expert cook, or a physically elite athlete. Doing represents the experiences that will actually fill your days, from taking a month-long trip through the mountains of South America to funding a local animal shelter. You must list these elements out with ruthless specificity. If your dream is not incredibly detailed, it is merely a hallucination. Once you have defined the exact components of your ideal existence, you will likely run headfirst into the most common and destructive illusion in modern society, the lump sum myth. This is the deeply held belief that in order to live like a millionaire, you must first possess millions of dollars in cash, sitting untouched in a bank account. It is the belief that you must somehow acquire a massive, intimidating fortune before you are allowed to experience the freedom it supposedly buys. This assumption is completely, entirely wrong, and it is the exact reason why so many people surrender their youth to the deferred life plan. The secret to unlocking your ideal life today is to completely abandon the concept of a grand lump sum and instead think exclusively in terms of monthly cash flow. When you look at your dreams through the lens of a monthly expense report, the impossible suddenly becomes entirely manageable. Think about a person who dreams of owning a spectacular, high-performance sports car, traveling first class to Europe twice a year, and having a personal assistant manage all their tedious daily chores. In the traditional mindset, this person believes they need $3 or $4 million saved up to safely support this lifestyle. But if you actually calculate the monthly cost, the reality is shocking. The sports car, when financed or leased, might cost a couple of $1,000s a month. The first-class travel, broken down over 12 months, is just another few thousand. A remote assistant might cost only a few $100s. Suddenly, an unimaginably luxurious lifestyle does not require a dragon's hoard of wealth. It simply requires generating an extra $5,000 or $6,000 of monthly income. This realization shifts your entire focus. You take the total monthly cost of your absolute wildest dreams, add it to your basic monthly living expenses, and divide that number by 30. This leaves you with your target daily income. This specific, unromantic number is the exact dollar amount you need to generate every single day to live like royalty. For most people, when they finally do this math, the daily number is astonishingly lower than they ever anticipated. It transforms an overwhelming, lifelong pursuit into a clear, tangible daily goal. You realize that you do not need to win the lottery to live a breathtaking life. You only need to build a system that produces your target daily income. Of course, defining the dream and calculating the exact daily cost is only the preparation. The true magic happens the moment you apply strict timelines to these desires and force yourself into immediate action. A dream without a timeline is just an excuse to procrastinate. You must look at your deeply defined goals and ask yourself the most uncomfortable question of all. What exact steps can I take to make this happen right now? Not next year. Not when the kids graduate. But right this very second. You must define the single action you will take today, the action you will take tomorrow, and the action you will take the day after that. If your goal is to live on a vineyard in Italy for 3 months, the action for today is not to magically acquire $1 million. The action for today is to research short-term vineyard rentals online. The action for tomorrow is to email 3 property owners to ask for extended stay pricing. The action for the day after is to calculate exactly how much of your daily target income needs to be allocated to secure the deposit. Action breaks the spell of impossibility. Society expects you to be a reasonable person, and the reasonable person adapts themselves to the world as it currently exists. They accept the commute, they accept the vague dreams, and they accept the waiting. But human progress, and certainly personal liberation, depends entirely on the unreasonable person. You must become completely unreasonable about your demands on life. You must persist in trying to adapt the world to fit your exact specifications, rather than shrinking your dreams to fit the world's limited imagination. When you define exactly what you want, calculate its precise daily cost, and demand that reality yield to your immediate daily actions, you stop waiting for your life to begin and start actually living it. Chapter 4. The End of Time Management. We are conditioned to worship at the altar of the busy calendar. For decades, the professional world has peddled a deeply flawed solution to the overwhelming demands of modern life. The promise that if you just organize your schedule perfectly, you can somehow do it all. The conventional belief is that to get more out of life, you simply need to try and fit more activities into your average workday. But if you truly want to reclaim your existence, you must completely kill the idea of managing your time better. Traditional time management is a concept designed strictly for those who are perfectly satisfied with living a deferred life. It is a system built to help you run faster on a hamster wheel, rather than helping you step off the wheel entirely. Instead of obsessively arranging an endless list of trivial chores, your ultimate objective must be to increase your per-hour results at least tenfold. The goal is to design a reality where you can achieve substantially more in heavily focused 2-hour days than you ever did in your prior, exhausting 12-hour workdays. To understand how this mathematically impossible feat is actually completely achievable, you have to sit down and deeply analyze where your absolute best results are actually coming from. When you strip away the noise and look at the raw data of your life, you will find that 2 absolute, unyielding laws are usually in play. The first of these forces is Pareto's law, a principle stating that exactly 80% of your desired outputs will result directly from just 20% of your inputs. To feel the weight of this law, imagine a fiercely dedicated freelance consultant who works 70 hours a week, constantly on the brink of burnout. They take every meeting, answer every late-night email, and bend over backward for dozens of different clients, believing that this relentless hustle is the only way to survive. But one weekend, pushed to the edge of exhaustion, they sit down and ruthlessly audit their income. They discover a shocking truth. Out of 20 active clients, just 4 of them are generating 80% of the total revenue. Those same 4 clients are also the easiest to work with. The other 16 clients, the ones demanding endless revisions, emergency phone calls, and constant hand-holding are producing merely 20% of the profit while consuming the vast majority of the consultant's life. By applying Pareto's law, the path to freedom is terrifying but obvious. Fire the bottom 80%. By eliminating the massive input that produces minimal output, the consultant instantly reclaims 50 hours a week while losing almost no actual income. The second force you must master is Parkinson's law, which dictates that a given task will automatically swell in both importance and complexity in direct relation to the time allotted for its completion. Consider the universal experience of being assigned a major presentation with a deadline exactly 1 month away. Because you have 30 days, the task suddenly feels monumental. You spend the first 2 weeks vaguely researching, organizing your desk, worrying about the project during dinner with your family, and tweaking font sizes. The task swells to fill the entire month, bleeding anxiety into your evenings and weekends. Now, imagine a different scenario. You are given that exact same presentation assignment, but your computer crashes and you only have exactly 2 hours to build it before stepping onto the stage. What happens? You skip the useless formatting, ignore the trivial data, zero in on the absolute core message, and get it done. The quality is often even better because the strict constraint forced you to eliminate the fluff. With these two monumental laws in mind, you should completely forget the entire concept of time management. You do not need a better planner or a new organizational app. Instead, it is time to get deeply serious about becoming wildly more effective rather than just more efficient. There is a massive, life-altering difference between the two. Being efficient simply means performing your assigned tasks as quickly as possible, regardless of whether those tasks actually matter. Being effective means doing strictly what moves you closer to your ultimate goals. To build a life of profound freedom, you must synthesize these principles perfectly. You must identify the very few absolutely critical tasks which contribute the most to your income and success, and then forcefully schedule these vital tasks to be completed with extremely short and clear deadlines. If you do not actively create these artificial, brutal constraints, minor tasks will naturally swell like a gas to consume all of your available time. You will inevitably fall into the tragic trap where you consistently mistake sheer activity for actual productivity. Instead of moving the needle on your life's true ambitions, you will end up jumping from one meaningless interruption to the next without ever getting anything of genuine value done. You will end up feeling completely suffocated, operating under the heavy illusion that you are being run by your business instead of the other way around. You will end up wasting the most valuable years of your life either through the blind force of habit or simply by imitating the exhausting, aimless behavior you see everyone else doing. The ultimate act of liberation is realizing that the workday does not have to be 8 hours long. It only needs to be as long as it takes to execute the vital few things that actually matter. Chapter 5. The Power of Selective Ignorance. We live in a society that treats the endless consumption of information as an absolute moral virtue. From the moment we wake up, we are bombarded by a relentless stream of breaking news, digital notifications, and trivial updates, all designed to make us feel deeply connected to the world. But if you step back and honestly evaluate the impact of this constant intake, you will realize a profound and uncomfortable truth. A wealth of information inherently creates a massive poverty of attention. We are terrified of being out of the loop, so we allow our minds to become overflowing reservoirs of irrelevant, unactionable facts. To truly reclaim your time and step out of the deferred life trap, you must perform a radical act of rebellion. You must learn to actively cultivate a state of selective ignorance, allowing yourself to feel genuinely good about the fact that you no longer fill your mind with trivial and worthless information. Consider the daily routine of a typical professional, a deeply caring individual who starts every single morning by scrolling through a chaotic feed of global crises, economic anxieties, and political arguments. Before they have even spoken a word to their own family, their emotional state has been entirely hijacked by circumstances happening thousands of miles away, completely outside of their professional competence or personal control. They spend hours every week staying informed, believing it makes them a responsible citizen. But what does this habit actually consume? It consumes their focus, their creative energy, and their presence. To break this destructive cycle, you must place yourself on a strict, low-information diet. This means enthusiastically cutting out the habitual reading of daily newspapers, completely eliminating the mindless surfing of the internet for news, and deeply restricting television to a very small window of pure pleasure viewing each day. Instead of wasting your most precious cognitive resources following the media's panic cycle, you should redirect that magnificent energy towards speaking deeply with your spouse, playing with your children, and relentlessly focusing on your own immediate goals. The immediate fear that strikes people when they consider this diet is the terror of missing a truly catastrophic world event. But this fear is completely unfounded. If something monumental happens in the world, you do not need an alert on your phone to know about it. You will inevitably stay up to date with the major shifts in the world simply by asking your colleagues about what is new over coffee, or by accidentally glancing at the bold headlines when you walk past a newspaper vending machine on the street. By deliberately choosing to ignore anything that is time-consuming, inherently negative, or totally irrelevant to your specific goals, you will be absolutely astonished by the massive amount of free time and mental clarity you suddenly possess. You can replace the anxiety-inducing articles with a calming piece of fiction right before bed, letting your mind rest rather than racing into the night. After just a few weeks of living as a deliberate ignoramus regarding the unimportant, you will look back in sheer disbelief at how much of your life you previously wasted without ever giving it a second thought. Once you have secured your mental borders from the outside world, you must turn your attention to the internal time wasters that plague your daily work. The most insidious of these are the constant, fragmented interruptions. The ping of an email, the ringing phone, the colleague stopping by for a quick question. To defeat these, you must master the incredibly powerful art of batching. Imagine doing your laundry. You would never wash and dry a single pair of socks every time you took them off. You wait until you have a full basket and do it all at once, because it takes the exact same amount of setup time to wash one pair as it does to wash 30. Your work tasks must be treated with the exact same ruthless efficiency. Instead of leaving your inbox open all day and reacting like a frantic switchboard operator, you must train the world to wait. You check your messages only at predetermined, heavily restricted intervals, perhaps no more than twice a day. And you delete as much as humanly possible. You establish strict boundaries, perhaps maintaining a standard phone line that goes directly to a voicemail you check in batches, while reserving a private number strictly for absolute emergencies. When you do communicate, you get straight to the point and move on instantly. You politely ask to be excused from aimless meetings, promising to review a brief summary later, or you fiercely dictate a hard stop time before the meeting even begins. However, perfectly batching your tasks is utterly impossible if you remain the central bottleneck for every minor decision in your professional ecosystem. To truly achieve the freedom of selective ignorance, you must systematically empower your colleagues and employees to act completely without your permission. Picture a brilliant small business owner who cannot take a single day off because her team constantly bombards her with minor customer complaints and trivial operational hiccups. She is trapped by her own indispensability. The only way to escape is to set a universal, permanent policy. If a problem costs less than a certain comfortable dollar amount to solve, say $100, the team is explicitly instructed to do whatever it takes to fix the issue immediately without ever checking with her. The moment you implement this kind of profound trust, the magic happens. By removing yourself as the required checkpoint, you instantaneously outsource a massive proportion of the emails and phone calls that used to ruin your day. But something even more beautiful occurs beneath the surface. By sending a clear, undeniable signal that you deeply trust your colleagues to use their own good judgment, you allow them the space to step up, prove their competence, and truly excel in their roles. It transforms a rigid, stressful environment into a magnificent win-win scenario where your customers receive remarkably faster service, your co-workers feel respected and much happier, and you finally reclaim the quiet, uninterrupted space necessary to build the life you actually want. Chapter 6. Building Your Virtual Arsenal. We carry a deeply flawed badge of honor in modern society, the profound, misguided belief that if you want something done right, you absolutely must do it yourself. We wear our self-reliance like a heavy armor, stubbornly refusing to ask for help even as we drown in a sea of trivial obligations. You might be fiercely intelligent about applying the principles of high-leverage focus to the core of your career, ruthlessly prioritizing your biggest projects. Yet, the moment you clock out or transition to the administrative side of your life, you suddenly act as though your time has absolutely zero monetary or emotional value. To truly design a life of absolute freedom, you must fundamentally change your relationship with control. You must stop acting like the tireless laborer of your own life and start stepping into the role of the executive architect. Imagine a highly successful independent consultant. On a Friday afternoon, she is a master of her craft, elegantly negotiating complex contracts and providing brilliant strategic insights that generate massive value for her clients. Her professional hour is easily worth hundreds of dollars. But when Saturday morning arrives, this same brilliant strategist can be found sitting on the floor of her living room, completely exhausted, spending 4 agonizing hours manually typing data from a stack of physical receipts into a messy spreadsheet, followed by another 3 hours cross-referencing a dozen different websites to find the absolute cheapest flight for a family holiday. She feels a false sense of accomplishment because she saved a few dollars by doing it herself. But if she were to honestly look at the mathematics of her existence, she would realize a terrifying truth. She just spent 7 hours of her limited, precious weekend performing tasks that someone else, somewhere in the world, would gladly and expertly do for a fraction of what her time is genuinely worth. She is actively stealing joy and rest from her own life simply because she refuses to delegate. The bridge between a life of constant, suffocating maintenance and a life of genuine liberation is the utilization of remote, on-demand support. Through the astonishing connectivity of the modern world, it is now entirely feasible and incredibly practical to build a global infrastructure of highly skilled virtual assistants who can seamlessly take over the vast majority of the agonizing friction in your daily life. You can essentially hire a brilliant remote proxy to handle the noise, allowing you to focus purely on the signal. For most people, the immediate reaction to this idea is a wall of psychological resistance. We convince ourselves that our lives are too uniquely complicated to hand off, or we fall back on the tired excuse that it would simply take longer to explain a task than to just do it ourselves. But this is exactly the trap. You must start small, deliberately pushing through the discomfort of letting go. Think about the single, lingering, profoundly annoying administrative task that has been sitting at the very bottom of your to-do list for 3 months. It is the task you dread so much that it drains your energy just thinking about it. That is your perfect starting point. When you decide to hand off that first assignment, you must master the delicate art of crystal clear communication. The most common reason a delegation experiment fails is not because the assistant is incapable, but because the person assigning the work is lazy in their explanation. If you hand off a vague, cloudy instruction, you will inevitably receive a disorganized, frustrating result, leading to endless cycles of wheel spinning and wasted money. You must learn to define the requested outcome with brutal, meticulous detail. You have to make it incredibly easy for your remote counterpart to succeed, to the point where they might even surprise you with the quality of their execution. Crucially, however, you must never fall into the trap of outsourcing your own inefficiency. It is completely pointless and a massive drain on your cash flow to pay someone else to do a task that never actually needed to be done in the first place. Before you pass an assignment across the globe, you must aggressively filter it through the lens of elimination. If a task can be entirely ignored without any genuine negative consequences to your life or business, you must eliminate it altogether. Only the essential, unavoidable chores that survive this ruthless filtration process should be passed down the line. As you become more comfortable with this new dynamic, you must also protect yourself structurally. Instead of relying on a single, isolated freelancer who might suddenly get sick or disappear, it is vastly superior to engage with an established agency that provides a deep pool of available talent, ensuring that your life never misses a beat. Furthermore, whenever you hand over a project, you must demand a clear plan of attack and mandate a strict cap on the number of hours they are authorized to spend on it. You authorize a few hours, review the progress, and course correct if necessary. This entirely eliminates the terrifying risk of waking up to a massive, unexpected invoice for 80 hours of misguided work. Once you break through the initial awkwardness of this process, something beautiful and entirely addictive happens. You begin to look at every single frustration, every delayed appointment, and every tedious research project through a new, deeply empowering lens. You start asking yourself constantly, could someone else do this for me? You begin offloading not just professional data entry or website maintenance, but intensely personal administrative burdens. You have someone else schedule your medical appointments, research the best schools in a new neighborhood, or compile a pristine list of specialized contractors to fix your roof. By systematically transferring the heavy, uninspiring weight of your daily obligations onto the shoulders of a capable, remote team, you are not just buying back your time. You are buying back your mental bandwidth, your creative energy, and your capacity to finally engage with the magnificent high-level dreams you have been deferring for years. Chapter 7. The Economics of the Niche. Once you have mastered the art of radically clearing your schedule and handing off the heavy administrative friction of your life to a remote team, a profound void opens up. You have reclaimed your time, but true liberation requires a financial engine that operates entirely without your constant supervision. You cannot sustain a life of ultimate mobility if you are still manually trading your hours for an hourly paycheck. Once you know exactly how to use remote assistance efficiently, the next mandatory step in setting up an automated system to generate cash without requiring your personal time is to find a genuinely viable and profitable niche product. The most fatal flaw that destroys aspiring entrepreneurs is a fundamental misunderstanding of how desire works. They typically isolate themselves, dream up a wildly complex product they believe the world desperately needs, spend their entire life savings building it, and then exhaust themselves trying to convince random strangers to buy it. You must approach this dynamic completely backward. It is vastly much easier to fill a pre-existing demand than it is to stubbornly try and miraculously create entirely new demand out of thin air. You must begin by looking outward, not inward. First, purposefully pick a highly specific niche market which you can affordably reach, and then relentlessly look for a product that those exact people will likely buy. You need to clearly define your target customers, figure out precisely what gives them genuine pain or frustration in their daily lives, and then look for an elegant product they will be actively willing to buy to resolve that pain. When you begin to brainstorm a few different product ideas to serve this specific group, you must force yourself into absolute clarity, aiming for something you can perfectly describe in one single sentence or less. Complexity is the enemy of a fully automated lifestyle. Keep your product completely simple, meaning you should be able to clearly explain it on a basic website without any problems or confusion for the visitor. You also need to position yourself in a highly specific economic sweet spot. The mass market is generally ideal for products priced somewhere between $50 and $200. So you should absolutely try and hit that specific price point if you possibly can. When deciding what to offer, you generally have three distinct paths. You can purchase existing items at wholesale and simply resell them at retail. You can license someone else's brilliant idea if you already possess the capital, or you can bravely create something entirely of your own design from scratch. Consider the plight of a highly sought-after private language tutor who works exclusively with corporate executives. Because they come from a heavily service-based industry background, their immediate natural inclination when trying to earn more money is to simply offer a premium consulting service. But that deeply flaws their entire objective, as it sets hard limits on exactly how much they can ever possibly sell in a given week. Their income is still violently chained to the clock. A vastly superior approach is to permanently embed their specific, hard-earned know-how into a highly tangible product which can then be perfectly replicated and sold in massive numbers, thus completely automating their income. They could turn their curriculum into a comprehensive digital audio course or a specialized workbook that sells quietly while they sleep. However, even with a brilliant idea, you face a terrifying cliff of risk. This is the exact moment where you must exercise extreme discipline. Do not spend thousands of dollars manufacturing a warehouse full of product based entirely on your own blind optimism. You must absolutely micro-test your product to see whether real people will actually buy it before you ever invest heavily in physical manufacturing or expensive inventory. You have to force the market to vote with its wallet before you commit your life savings. The most intelligent way to execute this micro-test begins with deep observation. Look very closely at your absolute best competitor in the space and then purposefully create a much more compelling offer than they currently have available. Take this newly refined, highly compelling offer and put it directly onto a very basic 1 to 3 page website. You must deeply figure out exactly what you need to do to clearly differentiate yourself from the surrounding noise, and then go out and do precisely that. Your singular objective during this phase is to test the actual customer response to your proposed offer so you can have complete mathematical confidence that a willing market truly exists. There are several incredibly smart and cost-effective ways to execute this test in the real world. You might choose to run a short 48-hour online auction for your proposed item simply to see exactly how high the bidding naturally goes when exposed to the public. If you do not actually possess a physical product to ship to the highest bidder yet, you simply cancel the auction at the absolute last minute, having successfully gathered the vital proof of demand. Alternatively, you can set up a very simple digital advertising campaign using search engine keywords to drive highly targeted people directly to your test website. You set a strict, unyielding, daily budget limit of $50 and run the ad campaign for at least 2 days minimum and up to 5 days maximum. Once the testing period is over, you honestly tally your results and you ruthlessly drop any obvious losers without a single trace of emotional attachment. If the data proves that strangers are willing to hand you money for your solution, you have successfully crossed the threshold. You have discovered a genuine economic engine, and the only thing left to do is build the automated machinery that will run it in your absence. Chapter 8. The Absentee Architect. As you transition from a life of constant labor to a life of strategic design, you must always remember that your primary goal right from the absolute outset has been to create a business which can run entirely by itself and make money while you do something else. The ultimate objective is not to build a demanding new job that you merely happen to own, but to put an unshakable business architecture in place, which effectively removes the need for you to have any hands-on involvement whatsoever. You are stepping entirely out of the grueling operational trenches, positioning yourself instead as the absentee CEO who also happens to own the business. This profound shift requires you to completely abandon the ingrained habit of micromanagement and step into the role of a high-level systems architect. The master key to effectively executing this management by absence is to have incredibly robust processes in place, which will allow everything to happen perfectly without your direct involvement. To achieve this magnificent reality in practice, you must aggressively outsource every single step of your business model to highly capable specialist companies who can seamlessly scale up their involvement the exact moment your level of sales increases. There is an entire world of massive end-to-end fulfillment companies to choose from, entirely capable of warehousing, packing, and shipping your physical goods with a level of precision you could never achieve from your own living room. However, simply hiring remote fulfillment centers and customer service representatives is not nearly enough if you stubbornly remain the central switchboard through which all their questions must pass. You must consciously allow the different groups of outsourcers to communicate directly among themselves, empowering them to actively solve complex problems without your being in the loop at all. Imagine a scenario where a massive shipment arrives at your fulfillment center with slightly damaged packaging. If you are the bottleneck, production halts entirely while everyone waits frantically for your email response across multiple time zones. Instead, you must give them written permission to independently solve these issues. At first, you might authorize them to resolve only the least inexpensive problems without any need to consult you. But as you become deeply confident with how efficiently they work, you will naturally drop any limits and actively get them to solve every single problem that crops up. A business that runs itself must be structurally impenetrable to operational friction. Every single option you offer to a customer introduces a massive cascading chain of logistical complexity. To dramatically reduce your growing business's service overheads and keep it working exceptionally well, you must keep things ruthlessly simple by offering just one or two distinct purchase options, like a strictly defined basic and a premium tier. You must absolutely refuse to offer multiple shipping options, which only serve to confuse the warehouse and delay transit. Instead, deeply simplify the process. Offer exactly one incredibly fast shipping method for everyone and boldly charge a premium for it. Crucially, you must absolutely never offer overnight shipping under any circumstances, because doing so will inevitably generate a massive host of panicky customers and highly anxious phone calls checking on delivery statuses minute by minute. You must also fiercely eliminate the channels of communication that breed time-wasting inefficiencies. Do not ever offer phone orders. Aggressively direct absolutely everyone to your digital website for seamless online ordering. If this entirely automated hands-off checkout process is good enough for massive global retail titans like Amazon, it should absolutely be good enough for you. You must also resolutely refuse to offer international shipments, as the unpredictable customs delays and shifting tax laws are always a profound hassle you can easily do without. Part of protecting your absolute freedom involves aggressively filtering the exact type of people you allow into your commercial ecosystem. Instead of trying to heroically deal with problem customers who constantly complain and demand endless refunds, you should deliberately make it incredibly difficult for them to do business with you in the first place. There are many subtle, brilliant ways to completely achieve this protective barrier. You should never accept untraceable or highly inconvenient payments by Western Union or money orders. If you happen to deal with wholesale buyers, strictly require a formal tax ID number from resellers to instantly verify their legitimacy. You must also stand your ground and resolutely refuse to offer lower pricing for bulk orders, training your market to respect your absolute margins. Furthermore, when attempting to build your initial customer list, never make the critical mistake of offering a completely free product simply to capture a visitor's contact details. Instead, confidently offer them a very low-priced starter product. This tiny financial hurdle acts as an incredibly powerful filter that will beautifully weed out all the chronic freebie seekers who will never actually buy anything from you later on, thereby saving you an immense amount of time and money. To close the sale, automatically, while completely removing the perceived risk for the consumer, you must offer an incredibly bold win-lose guarantee. You might structure a promise stating that if the product doesn't work perfectly, not only will you completely refund their entire purchase investment, but you will also confidently add another 10% to the refund check just for their trouble. By engineering your entire business architecture around these profound boundaries, you create a silent, highly lucrative machine that works tirelessly in the background, fully funding the magnificent life you are finally ready to live. Chapter 9. Breaking the Invisible Chains. You cannot truly step into a life of absolute freedom if you remain chained to a physical desk, reporting to a manager who insists on seeing you in a chair from 9 to 5 every single day. To claim your ultimate mobility, you must systematically escape the conventional boss mentality and permanently sever any ties that restrict you to one geographic location. The modern professional is often terrified of this prospect, confusing physical presence with professional loyalty. But true liberation requires you to completely redefine where and how value is created. If the automated income streams you have meticulously built are already generating substantial and reliable cash flow, you might feel completely secure in handing in your resignation today and diving headfirst into your new reality. But the leap into the unknown is daunting, and it is perfectly normal to feel a deep sense of psychological friction at the thought of severing your corporate lifeline all at once. If abandoning your primary salary entirely feels like a leap you are not quite ready to make, there is a strategic alternative. You can carefully engineer a gradual transition by establishing a firm goal to work remotely at least 2 days a week, entirely without sacrificing your employment. You do not achieve this by begging for a favor. You achieve this by constructing an undeniable business case. The strategy begins by making yourself profoundly indispensable. You approach your manager and initiate a deeply constructive conversation about specialized training programs that would significantly elevate your direct value to the organization. You boldly propose that the company sponsors you to attend an intensive 4-week educational course, and you commit to mastering that new skill set completely. This preemptive move is a masterful psychological lever, actively increasing the company's perceived sense of loss if you were ever to leave the organization altogether. You are making yourself an expensive asset to lose. Once this valuable training is fully completed, you initiate the actual test. You strategically call in sick on a random Tuesday and Wednesday, but instead of resting, you spend those 2 days working from home with absolute laser-like intensity, creating an undeniable, highly detailed audit trail of exactly how much you were able to accomplish away from the noisy, distracting office. You compile this undeniable evidence into a sharp, concise summary that perfectly highlights the extraordinary benefits of your uninterrupted focus. When you return, you casually mention to your manager how utterly shocked you were by the sheer volume of work you completed while recovering at home. You then carefully propose a temporary 2-week trial where you replicate that remote focus for just 2 days a week, explicitly mentioning that your manager holds the absolute right to instantly veto the arrangement at any sign of declining performance. During this trial period, it is absolutely critical that your professional output shows a massive, undeniable improvement while you operate remotely. You must be a ghost in the office, but a titan in your deliverables. Following the trial, you immediately schedule a formal review meeting, meticulously comparing the staggering results of your remote days against your standard office output. Armed with this undeniable data, you confidently propose extending the remote arrangement to 4 days a week, once again strictly framing it as a trial basis. You must constantly reassure management that they retain the absolute power to alter or revoke the arrangement at any given moment if they are in any way dissatisfied. As the months pass, you establish a rhythm of regular follow-up meetings where your sustained elevated productivity is carefully analyzed, eventually proposing that this highly successful work-from-home arrangement become entirely permanent. By strictly structuring your request as an ironclad business case rooted entirely in enhanced commercial output, you logically back your manager into a corner where they simply have no rational business reason to refuse. Yet, you must be spiritually prepared for the possibility that an insecure manager might simply reject your proposal entirely out of an irrational need for control, at which point you must find the courage to take the final plunge and formally resign. The moment resignation becomes a genuine reality, a wave of profound, existential terror usually strikes, but these fears dissolve instantly when subjected to logic. You might panic and ask yourself if leaving your career is a little too permanent, forgetting that highly competent people can always easily secure similar employment elsewhere in the future if they ever truly need to. You might suddenly worry intensely about how to pay the monthly bills, completely ignoring the fact that if you have already built automated income systems, your survival is fully secured. Even if your side income is still growing, you can easily survive by aggressively eliminating your discretionary expenses and creatively finding new ways to generate immediate cash flow. There are always viable financial options available to those who refuse to panic. The paralyzing fear of losing corporate health insurance or retirement matches is equally hollow. You can independently purchase your own excellent medical and dental coverage on the open market from any provider you choose. In reality, securing this independent protection will likely only cost you a highly manageable sum of $300 to $500 a month. Furthermore, you can easily transfer your existing corporate retirement accounts to a trusted independent financial institution in 30 minutes or less, completely retaining control of your financial future. Perhaps the most pervasive myth is the terrifying belief that an employment gap will permanently ruin your professional resume. In reality, having a 1 or 2 year gap where you boldly traveled the globe and accumulated profound life experiences is viewed by dynamic, modern employers as a massive positive attribute rather than a negative flaw, should you ever deliberately choose to re-enter the traditional workforce. The absolute truth you must internalize is that tens of thousands of people bravely leave their jobs every single day, and the world absolutely does not end. If you are ever forced to return to the corporate ranks, your highly marketable skills and deep experiences will continue to grant you an abundance of lucrative options. Fundamentally changing your employment reality is never quite as difficult or catastrophic as it might initially appear to the anxious mind. In fact, by stepping off the treadmill and aggressively claiming your freedom, you will almost certainly end up doing exceptionally well out of the transition. Chapter 10. The Art of the Mini-Retirement and the Search for Meaning. There is a strange, universally accepted madness in how we approach our deepest desire for rest. We grind away relentlessly for an entire year just to be granted a frantic, heavily compressed 2-week vacation. We sprint through airports, exhaust ourselves trying to cram an entire culture into a few hurried days, view a foreign world strictly through the insulated windows of a high-end hotel, and return to our desks more exhausted than when we left. We endure this cycle because we tell ourselves that one day, decades from now, we will finally have the time to slow down. But why wait until you retire for good to find out whether you actually like that kind of boundless freedom or not? The ultimate expression of a liberated life is to permanently reject this exhausting model. Instead of taking hurried vacations, you must start taking profound mini-retirements, boldly heading off overseas for extended periods to deeply experience entirely different lifestyles. In effect, what you are brilliantly doing is taking your usual 20 to 30 year retirement period and fundamentally redistributing it throughout your active working career, instead of tragically saving it all for the very end when your health may falter. The advantages of this paradigm shift are deeply transformative. First, the pace of your existence slows down beautifully. You can actually relax by staying in one place for months at a time, rather than spending all your precious time anxiously waiting in airplanes or at crowded airports. What is profoundly shocking to most people is that living abroad for these extended periods is very often vastly cheaper than your normal, everyday monthly living expenses back home. When you factor in the incredibly favorable currency exchange rates in many beautiful parts of the world, and consider all the heavy domestic overheads you simply won't have to pay for, like unused gym memberships, local subscriptions, high rent, redundant insurance, and daily dining out, the economics of global freedom suddenly become incredibly favorable. Moreover, preparing for a months-long mini-retirement acts as a magnificent forcing function to aggressively declutter both your personal and professional life. The absolute reality that you will be putting your personal possessions into a commercial storage unit that you actively have to pay for while you are away forces you to seriously evaluate whether each physical item is really, truly necessary. You inevitably end up getting rid of massive loads of things that you have just blindly accumulated by accident over the years. To smoothly engineer this escape without your life collapsing in your absence, you must treat your departure like a highly structured, logistical countdown, about about 3 months before you leave, your primary focus is to ruthlessly eliminate. You go deep into your belongings, deciding exactly which 20% of your possessions you genuinely use 80% of the time. And you relentlessly sell the rest. You must realize that you can always simply repurchase things you later find you absolutely cannot live without, including cars and homes, when you eventually return. 2 months out from your trip, you systematically automate absolutely everything. You diligently set up automatic payment by credit card for all the essential recurring expenses you will keep paying while away, and arrange automatic debits directly from your bank accounts to effortlessly pay your monthly credit card bills. You also officially give someone you deeply trust a legally signed power of attorney that they can safely exercise when specifically instructed to do so by you. As the departure date closes in, you digitize your existence. 1 month out, you legally start getting your physical mail forwarded directly to a trusted friend who you pay a small fair fee to securely open each piece of mail and instantly email you a brief description once a week. You meticulously ensure all financial deposits from your automated businesses are being successfully banked completely automatically. 2 weeks out, you secure your vital documents by safely scanning all your essential credit cards, formal identification, and health insurance details into a secure computer that you and your trusted family can easily access from anywhere. You establish a global voice-over IP phone number that seamlessly forwards calls directly to your cell phone, allowing people back home to simply call a local phone number and talk with you naturally wherever you happen to be in the world. You cleverly downgrade your normal domestic cell phone to the absolute cheapest plan and set up a clear voicemail message that politely tells callers you are currently overseas and actively directs them to contact you by email if they have a genuinely urgent matter, explicitly mentioning you will absolutely not be checking your voicemail while overseas. Finally, just days out, you put your vehicles into secure storage, carefully disconnect the battery, put the vehicles completely on jack stands, and brilliantly change your auto insurance policy down to theft coverage only. By thoroughly working through all of these logistical issues well in advance, you achieve total peace of mind. Your life runs flawlessly on remote control, leaving you a few glorious days to sit back, pack, and do nothing much at all before you fly. But when you finally arrive at your tropical villa or your quiet European apartment, a deeply unexpected emotional challenge often strikes. Sooner or later, when you have successfully built a life entirely around a heavily automated, drastically reduced work week, you will likely experience a vague, confusing sense of guilt that you simply cannot put your finger on. It might heavily arise from the uncomfortable fact that you now have entirely enough money and more than enough free time to do whatever you want, while absolutely everyone else around you back home is still miserably stuck in the exhausting 9-to-5 rut. Or you may suddenly find that you have so much unprecedented idle time it terrifyingly feels like you're completely running out of interesting things to do, making you feel profoundly isolated. This is the ultimate existential hurdle of the newly liberated individual. The noise of a busy life often masks a deep lack of purpose, and when you remove the noise, the silence can be deafening. If this terrifying emptiness happens to you, the absolute first thing you must do is relax, because this is an incredibly good, luxurious problem to have when rationally compared to the brutal, exhausting challenges lots of other people are forced to face each day. Then you must deliberately turn outward and find something completely new to learn, whether that is mastering the local language, deeply immersing yourself in the culture where you are, or enthusiastically learning how to play a regional sport. Furthermore, you must aggressively find some genuinely meaningful way to serve and help others around you. You can cure isolation instantly, either by passionately finding a cause you personally relate to and happily volunteering some of your free time, or by quietly making some powerful anonymous donations to a service organization of your absolute choice. You must also take this magnificent, quiet opportunity to actively revisit and completely reset your personal dreamlines, taking a deep, honest look at exactly what you have successfully accomplished thus far in your life and figuring out precisely where you deeply want to head from here. With your survival beautifully automated and your calendar completely clear, you can formally consider testing a totally new part-time or full-time vocation, a genuine, true calling or a long-forgotten dream occupation. You can finally pursue whatever incredible thing you desperately dreamed of being when you were just a kid, successfully recapturing the magnificent excitement of childhood, because there are absolutely no more chains or excuses left to hold you back. Ultimately, you must learn to completely forget whatever grand, abstract things you simply cannot define or directly act upon, and relentlessly focus your beautiful, unburdened energy strictly on the powerful things you can genuinely influence. You have finally bought back your life. Now, it is time to live it.